God here. And it's football season. And it's like 100 degrees outside. Sorry about that. Welcome to Season 4 of Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoyseth and Dave Daba.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is week number 5 of your National Football League season. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave Daba up in Northern California, and we are the only National Football League prediction show that's actually going to lead off with the Minnesota Twins actually winning a playoff series for the first time since 2002. Mr. Hoyseth, dogs and cats sleeping 4 feet above my bed. The losing streak is finally over.
Yeah, unbelievable, right? I mean, when you think about that, just when you put it into context, they had lost 18 straight games. It's really kind of inconceivable when you think about it. I mean, because if you make the playoffs, you're a good team. I mean, it's not like they're just a dog team that made the. I mean, you know, you have to have a reasonable record, a winning record in all likelihood, to make the playoffs. And to lose 18 straight games is an amazing feat. It's a feat, really. It's hard to do. And so I doubt it's ever been done before. I don't think anybody's ever lost 18 straight playoff games before, but
I mean, if you could have put $100 down on it, that the Twins would lose 18 in a row, that was a $10 million ticket right there.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's like winning the lottery numbers there, the odds of that happening. So it's nice to see them get over the hump and get get 2 W's rather, and move on. And so, they look good. I mean, the pitching is decent. I still don't think they're a fundamentally sound baseball team, but I don't think many teams are really fundamentally sound. It's not really what they teach anymore. So It's a swing away, swing for the fences in case, swing hard in case you hit it. And that's the name of the game in the year 2023.
Somehow, I think the Minnesota Twins are going to get cheated out of beating the Houston Astros, and I'll leave it at that. All right, as always, Mr. Hoyseth, we've got our top 10 games worth actually spending some money on this week. I should say that we are recording Thursday late in the afternoon on the West Coast. We'll probably wrap up recording right before the start of that game that desperately needs Taylor Swift to show up if it's going to have any sort of ratings. That Bears Washington Commanders football game. So I know we won't be covering that, but Mr. Hoyseth, what is your first game of the week?
I got the Eagles at the Rams, Dave, and I think we're going to disagree on this one. The Eagles are 4.5-point favorites. I think we might agree on this point. The Eagles have really not played great football, but they win, right? And the Rams, I think, have actually played better football than people expected them to play. And it just seems to me like the Eagles keep skating by. They keep skating by, and they're a good enough football team where they can get away with that. But I've been saying now for a couple of weeks, I think the Rams are going to beat somebody. They're going to upset somebody's day, just because they're playing good enough football. I like Kyron Williams, the running back, and obviously Puka Nacua is doing some fun things. But I'm not trusting that the Eagles are playing that good of football. So I'm going to take the Rams, and I'm going to take that 4.5, even though it's on the road.
Yeah,
it's actually in LA as well.
Yeah, it's at SoFi, and word today, late in the afternoon, looks like Cooper Kupp is going to be activated for the game as well, which of course would play into Brad's decision to go against the undefeated Eagles. This is an actual game. I sort of went back and forth. I think I went back and forth on most of the games this week, Brad. It was swaying just, back and forth. But I'm going to stick with the Eagles primarily because I think their defensive line is going to run havoc over that makeshift offensive line that the Rams are going to be rolling out. I like the Eagles to win by actually more than a touchdown in this game. Sean McVay is a good coach, and I'm buying into some of the younger players. But I think this is a week where the Eagles continue to win, and then in their press conference will continue to answer questions about how they're not hitting on all cylinders yet. Still, they'll win by a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, you may be right. The Eagles are a better football team. I just feel like the Rams are playing better football. And so the Eagles have been, they've beaten some okay teams. I wouldn't say they've run the gamut or anything. So, but I think the Rams are playing good. I think they're at home, and, weather's going to be hot. Welcome to LA, Philadelphia.
Ahoy, Seth, with his Yogi Berra attempt there. All right. Next up, we've got the Giants. I don't even want to put the word New York in front of them. The Giants, just absolutely ridiculous that they gave Danny Dimes all of that money during the offseason. I'm just going to say. So Giants at the Miami Dolphins, the Fins, as you like to call them, are favored by a whopping 10.5, which is just a huge line. I actually thought after seeing that performance the other night that this line would actually be even bigger than it is. So I look at this and I think the Dolphins offense is going to, handle that secondary that the Giants have. They've got a couple rookies back there in the secondary. They tried to play a lot of zone in their last game with those two rookies. It's not going to matter. The Dolphins are going to eat them up. This is going to be one of those games where I get that text from Brad where he's like, the Giants are hanging in there. And before you know it, it's going to be a blowout. I've got the Dolphins winning this one easily, and I'll give up the 10.5.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the easier picks of the day, Dave. I agree with you entirely on the Dolphins on this one. They can just score quickly, and the Giants don't have that ability. In fact, the Giants can't score at all. So, I mean, what are they going to do if all of a sudden Miami puts, 17 points up in a quarter? It's game's over. I mean, they just they're not built for that. And when you saw the way they played on Monday night, they're not really built for the NFL right now. It doesn't seem. I mean, they look terrible. That's I think the worst performance I've ever seen by an offensive line. I've been watching football for 50 plus years. I've never seen anything like that before. That was just a jailbreak. And, what I didn't really understand was why they were doing the same thing with 5 minutes left in the game that they were doing 5 minutes into the game. I mean, they never really attempted to get any type of running game established. Now, granted, you probably get Saquon Barkley back this week, but I didn't see anything from that offensive line that's going to create any holes for Saquon Barkley, that's for sure. So, that was my biggest problem I had watching that game. It's almost like they went to some sort of old Al Davis vertical passing game with Daniel Jones, and the offensive line just wasn't there. And 5 minutes left in the game, they're still doing the same thing. And what are they trying to get the guy killed? The game was over. I don't get it.
Yeah, and I felt that, at times I definitely felt bad for Daniel Jones. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
He drops back to get sacked. There's no drop back to pass. You're just dropping back to get sacked. I mean, and for Brian Daboll, who I think we both agree we really liked last year, to not make the proper adjustments for that whole team to sort of come out as flat as they did in all three phases of the game is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I don't know what is going on with this Giants organization. And we see this in the National Football League, where 1 week a team just plays terrible and the next week they sort of turn things around. I'm just not seeing any turnaround here. I mean, I think this is going to turn into one of the worst football teams, Saquon or no Saquon.
Yeah, I agree. It seemed like there was almost a white flag that was, waved towards the end of that game.
It had Caleb Martin written on the back of it.
All right, on to my next one. I've got the Ravens at the Steelers. Good old divisional matchup there. The Ravens are a 3.5-point favorite on the road, which I found kind of interesting. I just think these teams, it's a field goal deal. And, the Ravens haven't, in my opinion, been that impressive so far. The Steelers' defense at times has looked good, but their offense has really sputtered. So it's to me, it's a defensive war here, and it's a struggle. And whenever I see that, I see 3.5. I see that extra hook, and I go, you know what? I got to take the team with the extra at home. By the way, the Steelers. It just seems like it's going to end on a Justin Tucker thing or something like that, and 3.5 just seemed like a little too much for me to stomach. I'm going to take the Steelers and the points.
Yeah, I'm with you. If it was maybe less than that, I might, think about going the other way. It's obviously going to be a close game. I mean, it's going to be, pretty close down all the way down the stretch. When you look at the Steeler defense, I mean, they just did not show up last week against the Texans, and I think that right there, and the Texans actually were missing 3 offensive linemen. Hey, maybe their replacement offensive linemen are actually better than their actual offensive linemen, which is entirely a possibility. And it's also, what happens sometimes with young teams and coaches that those young teams start to buy into is sort of where the Texans are at this point. I mean, for God's sake, CJ Stroud hasn't thrown a pick yet, I think. So the Steelers, though, are just a mess. And you know how much I love Mike Tomlin and how much I believe in Mike Tomlin. Their practices this week, Brad, padded. They were probably the only team in the National Football League this week that actually had padded practices. So I think, Tomlin's getting his message across to the defense, at least. They'll keep this thing close enough, and I like the Steelers as well.
Yeah, it's one of those weeks. I mean, it's one of those games. It's the Steelers and the Ravens. I mean, that's a massive rivalry. And those two organizations don't really care for each other very much. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned Houston. We're going to get around to them later because I picked that Houston game. But I'm a believer Houston might be a better team than most people think.
Yeah, I agree, and I know we'll get into that game a little bit later. All right, the big Brad Sunday night football game, which is the Dallas Cowboys coming to town. So, Brad, here's the setup. Jerry Jones will be in town for the game. And Dak Prescott and the rest of the Cowboys, as you know, based up in the Bay Area, 49ers are actually favored by 3.5 in this one. And just to sort of remind everybody out there, I have the Cowboys not necessarily winning the Super Bowl, but I have them going to the Super Bowl this year. Staying in tune, I'm wearing the blue today. I am going to stick with the Dallas Cowboys in what you might call a little bit of an upset, but I think the Dallas Cowboys defense and Dak Prescott's going to figure some things out on the offensive side of the ball. You're giving me some points. I will certainly take them. I like the Cowboys in this one.
Yeah, I got to disagree with you on this one. The Cowboys are just too inconsistent for me, especially in big games. The defense really seems to be better than the offense in terms of scoring points right now in Dallas. There's a lot of problems on that offense. It doesn't look great. And, they've had some big blowout wins, but they've also had some really disappointing performances. They're going to get tested this week, though, because San Francisco's legit. And they can do a lot of things, and they do most of them well. They can play defense. They can stop that Dak Prescott offense. I don't know how Dallas is going to keep keep pace with the points. San Francisco could put up points, and so could come down to some turnovers, things of that nature. But at home, I'm going to take the Niners. They've just, I think, been a more consistent football team all year long than have the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are talented. They're good, but I want something that's consistent if I'm putting my money on the line. So I'm going to take the Niners and give those points.
Yeah, I don't often fall for the trap, Brad. The Brock Purdy is a system quarterback trap. But when you look at all the other quarterbacks that the 49ers have had there prior to Brock Purdy, regardless of whether or not he's a system quarterback, because for God's sakes, Tom Brady was the same kind of quarterback when he first entered the National Football League. I really like Brock Purdy as a quarterback. What I'm curious to see, though, is what happens when Brock Purdy actually goes up against a Dallas Cowboy caliber defense at this stage of his career and at this stage of the season. And so I am almost more betting against Brock Purdy to perform. I mean, he had like he threw a 95% completion rate last week. Like, that is unheard of. He's played great to this point. I think he's going to take a couple steps back this week. And that's why I've got the Cowboys actually winning this game. And then, Brad, the big question is, will you see Dave Dubois actually at the game? That is the big question. Will he get some national television coverage pregame on the sidelines? We'll just have to say.
You know what I'm waiting for this year, Dave? My worst guy on my fantasy football team right now is George Kittle. Where's he been? I think
he's played great. He's a great blocker.
I think George Kittle gets unleashed this weekend. I really do. I think that's the way you keep that pressure off of. You throw the short passes to Kittle in the flat. You keep that pressure off of Purdy's back. I think they've got all the tools to beat that Cowboy defense. I really do.
Yeah, unlike a lot of the other tight ends who think they're wide receivers, I guarantee George Kittle is not complaining about lack of production. He's a total football gamer, and if you tell him to just block for the rest of the season, he'll do it.
Yeah, it's not going to last long though. He will show up in the box score at some point. All right, my next game: Jags versus the Bills. I'm going the over/under in this one. It's at 49. I get a sense that's a little bit high. The Bills are at home, but they got a really good defense, and the Jags have been.
So Brad, they're at home in London. This is the crazy.
The Buffalo Burrow? Is that what? Okay, well, it's a London game. Those are usually boring, by the way, the London games. They tend to be lower scoring, which leads me to my under. I mean, it's 49. I felt like it was a little high. The Bills play good defense. The Jags at times can play good defense. But you go to London, and the offenses generally fall asleep. And so I think it goes way under 49. I'm taking the under.
The Jaguars spending back-to-back weeks in London. It's just getting every year, Brad. It's a little bit more Jags in London. I mean, just let's just go ahead and make the move. Let's just bail on Jackson. Sorry, let's bail on Jacksonville, and let's just move the team to Wembley. I'm just saying, get it done already, Roger Goodell. This just felt way too high to me for a London football game. We know that the Bills are certainly capable of scoring 30. Last year I probably would have taken the over, but I'm a year wiser now, Hoyseth. So I'm going to agree with you and take the under. And I, quite frankly, have not been terribly impressed by the Jags at all. We talked about the Jags a little bit last week as well, and I didn't see any like huge improvements last week after we talked about them. So I'm with you on this one.
Yeah, I think the Jags have really been, one of the disappointing teams so far. I mean, I really thought they were going to be, a contender and a team that was going to all season long, they were young last year and younger the year before, and now those guys should have been grown up a little bit, and so just haven't seen it so far. Maybe this is their breakout game. Maybe they get a big win against the Bills, but I'm with you. I go under on that.
All right, moving on to the Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings. The Chiefs on the road, favored by a whopping 4 points in this particular one. Brad, I was really on the fence here. I don't have I guess I don't have the faith in the Viking defense to strategize correctly and in how to deal with one Patrick Mahomes. If Brian Flores does I'm putting 8 people at the line, 30% of the time, they are going to get absolutely destroyed by the Kansas City Chiefs. That is assuming Tony can hold on to a catch. So I'm actually going to flip on this. I planned on taking the Vikes. I'm actually going to flip on this. I'm going to go against the Vikes, and I'm going to take the Chiefs and give up the 4.
I think that's a smart move, Dave. It's 5.5 actually, the line, but
yeah,
I think you're making a good move there. Look, I haven't seen it. The Vikings, in my opinion, they made the biggest mistake last week in that they won. I mean, if they lose, they're just one step closer to Caleb Williams. And this team is not – their defense is horrendous. I don't know how you stop Patrick Mahomes with that bad of a defense. I mean, even though the Chiefs haven't been clicking on all cylinders, it's just a matter of time, right? And so the Vikings, they've been a turnover machine all season long. The Chiefs make a lot of turnovers on defense. So I see a lot of problems for the Vikings here. I just don't know how they keep pace with the Chiefs, even though the Vikings, if there is a strength, it's their offense. I just feel like I just seen too many mistakes, and the defense is terrible. And you can't play the Chiefs with the terrible defense and expect to keep it close. I just don't see it. So I'm taking the Chiefs. I'm with you. I'm giving that 5.5.
Yeah, and I don't think like the Vikes are going to find themselves in the Caleb Williams real estate game.
Dave, don't you think though that there's a possibility that if the Vikings started 0-7 or 0-8 out of the gate, that all of a sudden Kirk Cousins becomes pretty good trade bait for somebody?
Yeah, I mean, we know the Jets would trade for him in a second if they could, and a bunch of other people would as well. But I don't think they're going to be at that point where they're 1-8. I don't think they're going to throw in the towel soon enough to make that happen. They are desperately missing 2 key weapons that they had last year.
Don't say it. How many yards has Dalvin Cook got for the Jets this year, Dave?
Like 5 yards rushing.
Exactly.
But one thing that I do know is if Dalvin was still on the Vikings, he'd have significantly more. They would be using him in a way where he'd still be explosive, more explosive. My guess is they'd have a couple more wins if they had both Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook. Now, Thielen is old; he can't even make it through a whole game anymore. I love Adam Thielen. He for a quarter he looks like Adam Thielen, and then the rest of the time he looks his age. So I get that, but they still desperately miss those 2 key players, and Cam Akers is just not. His Cam Akers' biggest claim to fame, Hoysef, is that he recovered from an ACL in 5.5 months.
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think Alexander Madison is the problem with the Vikings, Dave. I really don't. I mean,
and he runs hard.
He runs hard. He's a serviceable back. He's just fine. He was every bit as good last year as Dalvin Cook. They're a team that doesn't have any defense. And when you don't have any defense, that means you got to score a lot. And then right now they're making a lot of mistakes, turning the ball over. Cousins is, I don't know how many interceptions and fumbles he's got in the last 4 weeks, but it's been pretty bad.
I mean, even when they rush 8, they still can't get to the quarterback. So, I mean, what does that tell you?
All right, my next game is the Panthers at the Lions. And remember last week we talked about, you asked me, who's the best team in football? I completely forgot about the Lions, right?
Oh, yeah. I was like, when we finished up recording, I was like, the hell was Hoysef doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of your favorite teams there, those Lions. And your favorite quarterback, Jared Goff, and those kinds of things.
That's because Ford is job one.
But the Lions look pretty good, Dave. And what's weird about this year is it's not just the Lions offense. The Lions defense looks pretty darn good. And Dan Campbell's, they were like 30th in the league last year. He's completely flipped that thing around. They're playing like world beaters. And so the Panthers just don't have much. I know the Lions are given 9. It's at Detroit. I just feel a really positive vibe coming out of that city right now. It's almost like I think they believe this team is real and they could go a ways. And I'm not sure they're wrong. And so I'm going to take the Lions. I'm going to give the 9. I think it's going to be a tough day for the young quarterback and the Panthers.
Yeah. Bryce Young is, still suffering the way traditional quarterbacks would suffer when they enter the national, especially, high draft picks. He's not Justin Herbert out of the gate. He's struggling. I mean, and it's obvious. I have faith that he'll figure it out and that they'll get to a point where they'll be happy with their draft pick. But now, that defensive line has been fantastic for the Detroit Lions. Even their secondary has played much better than they did last year. If you go look at like the end of last season, like the last 5 or 6 games, that was a vastly improved defense. The reason the Lions went on a bit of the run that they went on towards the end of last season was because the defense got better. Teams either, as Yogi Berra, they either get better or they get worse. And he, they absolutely got better as the season went on. 9.5. I mean, is this like the largest give that the Lions have had to face in like the last 30 years, where they've been favored by so much?
Yeah, you probably have to go back to the Wayne Fontes era, worst case scenario. But I mean, I'm looking at this team's schedule down the road, Dave. I don't know how you stop them from winning the division. I really don't. I mean, look, this is some of the games on their schedule remaining. They got the Panthers, who aren't very good. They got the Bucks, who are mediocre. They also have the Raiders left on the schedule. They have the Bears again. They have the Saints, who don't look very good. They got the Bears again. Then they got the Broncos. I mean, I'm looking at this schedule going, I think they're a shoe-in to win this division. Am I wrong here?
I think they have the Vikes 2 out of the last 3 weeks of the season. I hate when the NFL does that, by the way. It's like you have all this AI technology, and that's the best you can do with your scheduling is, have 2 division foes not meet till week 15. It just, I want my easy wins earlier.
Who's going to be playing quarterback for the Vikings in week 15 and 17?
Probably somebody who's currently out of a job. Somebody is on the open market. Yeah, so I'm absolutely with you. The Lions are winning this for sure.
Hey, we didn't talk about this either, and we're not going to get around to it because I know we didn't pick any of these games, but is it me or is this young kid playing quarterback for the Cardinals? Is he a better player than Kyler Murray? Sure seems like it to me.
I think if the Arizona Cardinals could cleanly get away with moving Murray, they would do it. I think Murray is a bit of a head case for the organization, which is an organization that traditionally is owned by head cases. So I don't know. I mean, I just the Cardinal team, you just really, they're playing hard. You got to give it to the coaching staff there, the new coaching staff. This Dobbs kid, never had a chance. He's solid enough. I think on most teams he'd be a backup, but for 10 teams in the National Football League, he could absolutely be a starter. Is he going to be a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League? Hell no. But is he a 20th best quarterback in the National Football League? Yeah, maybe that's what you're looking at. With Murray, you're looking at somebody that could be a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. But there are, those important.
Hold on. I got to stop you there. I'm sorry. In what world is Kyler Murray ever going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL? I mean, he's a runner. That's what he is, Dave.
Yeah.
He's a one-trick pony, and that trick is now getting slower and slower. He's never been a pocket passer. And, maybe his former coach wasn't all that far off on him when he said he doesn't like to do homework and study and prepare for games, So I don't see in any world
here's what I think, Brad. I think if we were to do the top 10 quarterbacks in the National Football League, it gets really weak around 7. And there's room for a running quarterback to sneak into the top 10. That's
how about your boy Jared Goff? Is Jared Goff in that top 7, Dave?
Probably not.
Probably not. No.
All right. So moving on to our next game, Jets.
I like how I've just coupled you with the Lions. You've just let me run with this all day long. I'm calling them your Lions and your boy Goff.
Yeah,
you just let it go.
I don't know if you like in the NFC North, and it can't be the Packers, and it will never be the Bears. Lions. You can't help but sort of want to root for them if you're.
Hey, we're not doing the Bears game, are we?
No, because it's happening in 15 minutes.
Right. Well, but the Bears. How does that guy have a job?
This is gonna be it.
Dave, I mean, I'm watching that game last week. This is a team, the Bears, that hadn't, I think, trailed by less than 20 in any fourth quarter all year. And so they're tied. They got the ball. There's 3 minutes or 3 minutes and change left, and a 4th and 1 at the other team's, whatever it was inside the 25. It was not a long field goal by any means. And he decides he's going to go for it, a la Brendan Staley style, and just get stuffed. I'm like, you had a chance to finally take a lead in the fourth quarter and you passed that up. What are you waiting for?
I don't know. I mean, it's almost as if a lot of these coaches have spent more time playing Madden than actually.
And the other thing, the Charger guy we had the exact same thing happen 2 weeks in a row. He got stuffed and got bailed out with an interception at the goal line. The same exact thing. How do these guys keep their jobs, Dave? I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Bears organization is a mess. I mean, the only thing that's surprising to me is the people that walked into Soldier Field and stole all of that athletic equipment actually didn't return it, because that would have been so Chicago. We decided this was bad stuff. The Bears organization, just as a whole, is just continues to be a mess. I want Justin Fields to succeed, but it's gonna need a new regime, and whether or not he survives that, I don't know. Speaking of messes, Zach Wilson and the New York Jets head to Denver to I hate to say do battle with the Broncos. The Broncos are favored by a whopping 1.5 in this game, and I have no idea. To be frank, how this game's going to play out. Here's what I do know. is that Russell Wilson hasn't played that bad. Russell Wilson has played okay throughout the season. I think the Broncos are going to have a little bit of momentum here. Russell Wilson's is going to continue to play not that bad. And I don't know how Zach Wilson will do. One thing is for sure, though, if Zach Wilson plays the way he played the other night, the Jets will certainly have a chance to win this game, because for God's sakes, every other quarterback has been able to dominate this Broncos defense so far. So I think the real Zach Wilson is going to show up, and he's going to have a less than impressive performance. The Jets are going to go down to the Broncos in Denver.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. Both are not very good football teams. That I think we would agree on. But the Jets can at least play some defense from time to time. And so this is a Bronco team that struggles on both sides of the ball. I know that Russell Wilson hasn't been that bad, but they're not exactly lighting up the scoreboard either. So Sean Payton, I think, is going to go through a frustrating year there in Denver. The Jets already are frustrated, obviously, but I just see the Jets going on the road getting a win. I thought they looked pretty good in that game last week, even though it was a losing effort. I thought they played gamely. I haven't seen the Broncos play gamely all season long. So I'm going to take the Jets, and I'm going to take that 1.5 points on the road. I think the Jets are going to win that game outright.
Nathaniel Hackett Bowl. That's what this is being publicized as. That's like the worst bowl name ever. Like, you're the head coach of one team and you get fired after just one season, and then you're the offensive coordinator of another team with Zach Wilson as your starting quarterback, and people are calling this the Nathaniel Hackett Bowl. It's just it's just going to be an absolute disaster. Could go either way, though.
All right, my last game is a game that I think if you'd asked people 3-4 weeks ago if they would ever watch this game, they would say no way in the world they would ever watch this game. But now, fast forward to week 5, and the Texans are at the Falcons, and suddenly the Texans are kind of, an intriguing team to watch. I mean, C.J. Stroud has looked great. They play hard. They were pretty dominant last week. And so I think they look like a decent football team. I won't say a good football team, but I'm not impressed at all with what I've seen out of the Falcons so far. I just think it's a quarterback mismatch. I think Stroud looks like the better player right now than Desmond Ridder. And so I'm going to take the Texans on the road. I say they keep playing well. There's no reason to think they won't. Remember down the stretch last year, they played pretty good football. They played hard. They didn't win a lot of games, but they played hard, kept things interesting. And I just like what they're doing there. I think they're building it in the right direction. They got the quarterback. I think that's their future. And I think the Falcons have still don't have that.
Yeah, I love the Falcons head coach with the mustache, Arthur Smith. And just for the life of me, I can't figure out why he can't figure out his offense. And then it dawned on me, he's got a third string quarterback starting, and just this is what this is. Desmond Ridder is, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, is no Ryan Tannehill. Like the Falcons would be so much better if Ryan Tannehill was their starting quarterback. At least Tannehill knows how to hand the football off. Look, Ridder has been a complete disappointment to this point. Arthur Smith is completely handcuffed by his own quarterback. I don't know who else they have on the roster at this point. But they're in real trouble in Atlanta, and I really like the rest of the Atlanta Falcons team. I like Arthur Smith. I am was completely wrong about CJ Stroud in that I just didn't think he was going to get off to the kind of start that he's gotten off to. He hasn't been, lights out, Justin Herbert lights out, but he's been, mistake free for the most part. And in the National Football League, Kirk Cousins, that is something you absolutely have to be. If you're going to succeed. Really like the momentum that this Texans team is bringing into Atlanta.
Yeah, I agree with you. You threw me off with your Justin Herbert comment, being that you said he was lights out. I mean, they just won 2 games that they should have lost both of them, and had that happen, they'd be 0-4. I mean. So I haven't seen much from the Chargers at all, and that should be coach number 1 to go. And sorry to get off on a loose tangent here, but
Brad, no, not current Justin Herbert, rookie Justin Herbert.
Yeah, okay, well, Herbert didn't win the last 2 weeks. It was the defense making an interception that won the last 2 weeks. So I want to clarify that.
Yeah. It is just it is tough. All right. So moving on to our last game. Look, Packers at Raiders, Monday Night Football. I like to pick my Sunday night and Monday night games. And the question is, do I believe in Jordan Love? Do I believe that Matt LaFleur is a better head coach than the guy that they currently have in Josh McDaniels and the Las Vegas Raiders? Could I see the Raiders having a Raider performance and winning this game? Yes. But this is a rested Packer team. I like the Packers in this game. I've got to give up 2.5 to actually like the Packers. No word yet. I don't think Jimmy G is actually going to play. There's still a slight possibility. But I like the Packers in this game. And I think Jordan Love is good enough to win in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might flip-flop on this. I was going to take the Raiders just because they were at home. But if Garoppolo doesn't play, there's just nothing there. And, the Packers are, what are they, 2-2 out of the gate, had a disappointing loss to the Falcons, barely beat the Saints. Every game seems to be close for this team. And then the Lions just trampled them last week. So the Raiders are in trouble, though. I mean, that's another coach, right along with the Chicago coach, the Chargers coach. So it's a race to see who gets fired first. I mean, and I'm not sure the Raiders coach doesn't have the lead in that race right now. So I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna flip. I'm gonna take the Packers begrudgingly. I just think that they got a little bit more talent. They got a lot more talent than the Raiders have right now on that roster.
So, Brad, let me ask you this. If they go into halftime, the Raiders go into halftime down 34-0, does he get fired at halftime?
Nope. That is one bet I'll make, that the coach doesn't get. I know you keep hitting that thing. You've been talking about it for 4 years now.
There are 3 legitimate coaches that could get fired at halftime entering week 5.
I can't believe Eberflus is
still game tonight with a coach that could get fired at halftime. That's why I'm going to be watching.
I can't believe Eberflus had a job come Monday. I'm really surprised. Brendan Staley, I mean, if he'd have lost both those games in a row like he should have, I can't imagine being 0-4 and losing the way he would, that he would have kept his job. But I think he's very, very fortunate that his defense made 2 interceptions. But also Josh McDaniels, it's not like this is a new deal now. I mean, he hadn't had a lot of success as a head coach in the NFL. So it might be time if you're the Raiders to start looking elsewhere.
Yeah. And or see if Tim Tebow is available. to come out of retirement. All right, there you go. Those are our top 10 games worth spending some money on. Some of them are definitely worth more in terms of where you should spend your money than others. That being said, Brad, any final thoughts for week number 5?
Yeah, I finally had a good week last week. Things settled down for me in my life a little bit, and so I had some time to think about games and actually put some thought into them. Not much, by the way, but a little bit of thought. So anyways, hopefully I'm just hoping I have a little 2-week spurt here and I can keep hot and win some money for somebody out there. I don't know. I mean, there's some teams, though, we're going to find out a lot about here in the next couple of weeks. The Vikings, like I said, Dave, I'm not sure winning was a win there. At some point, it becomes counterproductive, especially when you're looking at the Caleb Williams kid out there playing quarterback for SC. That kid is pretty special, and I'd be doing everything I can at this point to make sure that happens. I'd be trading Kirk Cousins to whoever wants him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be a race to the bottom there for Caleb Williams, and but I just don't see the Vikes being in that race. Minus attempting to make some trades to get there at the end of the season, but. Anyways, all right. Well, that is it for this week's Gods of Odds. That is Brad Hoysev over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave DeBob in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing week.